Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rajan Pereira. Well, India and China reached an agreement on disengagement of troops from the north and south banks of the Pangong Lake in eastern Ladakh, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said in the Rajya Sabha on Thursday. Under the agreement, both sides will cease forward deployments in a phased, coordinated and verified manner in these areas. Well, the Defence Minister assured the House that India has not conceded anything while entering into the disengagement process, adding there are some outstanding issues with regard to deployment and patrolling at some other points along the LAC in eastern Ladakh. The Chinese side will keep its troops' presence in the North Bank area to east of Finger 8. Reciprocally, the Indian troops will be based at their permanent base near Finger 3. A similar action would be taken in the South Bank area by both the sides. These are mutual and reciprocal steps, and any structures that had been built by both sides since April 2020 in both North and South Bank area will be removed. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the India-China pullback. Joining me on the program today are Major General Ashwini Sivach, retired defence analyst, Manjeev Singh Puri, former ambassador, and Jayadev Ranade, President, Centre for China Analysis and Strategy. Thank you to all my panelists for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Ranade, let me begin the program with you first. Let's try and understand and analyse the possible factors that have resulted in the disengagement of troops.
I think we must proceed from the background that there is an absence of trust today that exists between us and the Chinese. I dare say that given the manner of Chinese propaganda in China, also they may be feeling that there is a trust deficit. But having said that, the fact is that this is a first tentative baby step towards defusing the situation and disengagement. So at Pangong So, which is a friction point where the troops were very close to each other, the effort has been to try and diffuse the situation at that particular point. So what we have seen is actually a suspension of patrolling between Finger 8 or Sirijap Fort, which is east of Finger 8, and the Dansing Thapa post at Finger 3, which is where we are, temporarily. That would be resumed once the talks get underway again, after we have seen and confirmed the verification of the disengagement that has been decided upon. So it's a very limited step. But there are two important points that I would like to flag here before we go deeper into this discussion. The first is that in his statement in Parliament today, the Defence Minister made very clear that large portions of our territory, over 38,000 in the western sector, that is in Ladakh, and over 90,000 claimed by China in Arunachal Pradesh, are in illegal occupation of the Chinese. So he has made very clear that that subject remains open, and I presume that as and when we discuss the border, those will also come into play and they will come up for discussion. So he has reasserted India's position, claim and sovereign rights on these territories. The second is he has also talked about other friction points that will be addressed in due course. So that is why I say this is only the first step, and I think there will be more rounds. But the fact that such a disengagement has happened after 9 months, I think is a welcome sign, and it brings to light many more facets of this relationship and of China's position, which can be discussed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Since we are here then, Ambassador, let's talk about China's position, and from a diplomatic point of view, what are your thoughts on this pullback?
Frank, thank you very much. You know, whenever armies pull back, someone like me only feels gladdened, and I think this is a good augury. I am particularly also happy that all of this has come about as a result of India being quite resolute and strong in asserting our position. Now, let's look at how the world has possibly changed in the last few months. Perhaps the biggest change is what has happened across the Atlantic. And I think the Chinese have also realized that, the geopolitics continues to remain one in which they will be looked at by the entire world for not following a rules-based international order. And it isn't a simple matter to do these transgressions and do this kind of expansionism and get away with it. But for me, of course, the positive was that we were resolute. We stood our grounds. The Chinese also realized. And I would like to just, end here and make a point that it is a combination of our resolute behavior being strong and strengthened there. Possibly the fact that, look, the Chinese have taken advantage of the situation over time, built up a certain amount of infrastructure, they'll continue to do it. Perhaps in various ways, they also found that it was perhaps useful to take a bit of a break. That may be so, as Mr. Jaidev Ranadev has just mentioned to you. But then also the global geopolitics. And I think COVID and all these things put together made it such that the Chinese thought that since they couldn't for the first time perhaps ever allow their populations to truly enjoy the Chinese New Year, at least give the country a bit of a break. Thank you.
Short and sweet, Ambassador. Let me bring the General in now. So General, just to get a fair understanding, as to what usually happens at these military level talks and how is the disengagement really carried out on the ground?
Frank, see, as far as disengagement is concerned, it is taking place at two places now. That is, one is north of Pangong and the south of Pangong. Now, as far as north of Pangong is concerned, they are occupying up till finger 4. Now, the Chinese have to vacate finger 4, 5, 6, 7 and they have to fall back to finger 8. It means the infrastructure which they have made it has to be removed and then they have to physically move to finger 8 in a phase and a deliberate move, and that will be verified on ground. And accordingly, as far as India is concerned, we have to also move from finger 4 to between finger 2 and 3 at Dhansing Thapa post, which is ITBP post. And the area between Dhansing Thapa and finger 8, as on today, will not be patrolled. It will be decided after the diplomatic talks build up thereafter. So therefore, 2-3 things will happen, that physically they have to move back, disengage, de-escalate and de-induct the troops to the line which is mentioned, Chinese to finger 8 and we between finger 2 and finger 3. And remember that we have also occupied a green top just above the finger 4, a dominating height which was almost dominating finger 4, that possibly also we have to vacate. Now, as far as the south of Pangong is concerned, my concerns are quite a bit. We have not mentioned what does it mean de-induction in south of Pangong. Our point is that on night 29th, 30th August, India has occupied Kailash range, which consists of Rajingla, your Spangur Gap and Gurung and Magar Hill. This is dominating complete Chushul Moldo Bowl, and this also to some extent dominate your Spangur Gap from where the Chinese came in 1962. Now the situation is that you can go in China through Spangur Gap, but the Chinese can't come. Now this is a tremendous advantage which we have achieved on night 29th, 30th, and these heights which we have occupied in Kailash range are falling in own area. Does it mean that we will be also vacating this Kailash range? Now, if that is the case, that is a cause of concern as far as I am concerned, because this was a game changer, a force multiplier, which has changed the equation completely. The initiative till then was with Chinese. After 29th, 30th August, the initiative to some extent passed on to India because we surprised the Chinese and we have occupied an area which is strategically very important in the whole corridor, and we occupy and also dominate Chashul Moldo. Now the details are not being given. Does it mean vacating of Kailash range in south of Pangong? No, that is very important. The second issue is, when we are talking about disengagement, we were talking every time it will be comprehensive disengagement starting from Daulat Beg Oldie and Dapsang, and thereafter your Galwan area, and then come to Pangong. But it looks like that we are restricting as on today north of Pangong and south of Pangong. What happened in Dapsang? Now, Dapsang is very crucial for India, and so is it crucial for Chinese. Chinese have come inside Dapsang, almost about 5 to 6 kilometers, not letting Indian patrol to go from patrol point 10 to 13. And what is happening is, of course, they have come because they thought that we have made a Darbuk Shok Daulat Beg Old Road, and Daulat Beg Oldie has been made with a brigade plus strength, with the tanks, RT guns. They were always thinking that the Indians may do something either in Saichen or threaten highway G219 going from Xinjiang to Lhasa, or to the west, that was China-Pakistan economic corridor in Gilgit-Baltistan. Not to divert or to put pressure on India, and also to give a depth to Saichen as well as their highway G219. They have come 5 to 6 kilometers inside and coming to the line which they were declaring in 1959. Now, if that is the case, if we don't talk about Dapsang, then possibly not a correct. Maybe in the second phase, the talk will go. 2-3 thing issue stands out again.
Right.
One is, as far as Dapsang is concerned, if the Chinese stay where they are, they can directly threaten Nubra Valley and Saichen Glacier. And this is the place where the collusion between Chinese and Pakistan can literally take place. In the east will be China, on the west will be the Pakistan from Gilgit-Baltistan. And remember, 2 divisions of the PLA already in Gilgit-Baltistan with Skardu airfield taken. So my concern is, till the Chinese do not move out from Dapsang, it will not be considered as a comprehensive disengagement which was prevalent in prior to April 2020. And the second issue is
points taken, General. I'll come back to you.
Kalasin.
I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. We'll take up the other issues as well. Let me bring in the others. Okay, Dapsang needs to be looked at. We need to ensure that, there's proper disengagement there as well. But like Mr. Ranade already pointed out, these are baby steps. Probably we'll see that happening in phase 2 and later on as well. But we may not see that happening at all too, because, Mr. Ranade, history has shown us that we can't trust Beijing to keep up its side of the bargain. So should we approach this disengagement with a lot of caution?
I think, Frank, not only caution, but we probably introduce a bit of trepidation also when dealing with the Chinese. There is, as I started off by saying, there is no trust in what they do or what they say, and they have proved it time and again. But here, let me mention 2 things. In his statement, Rajnath Singh did talk about other friction points being discussed. So I think General Soech's concern about Dapsang and all, they will come up for discussion later. I think another important point that we need to flag here is that the discussions have been led at the ground level by our corps commander and their corps commander. So the army officers, army personnel are seeing the situation on the ground and then clearing what can and cannot be discussed. So I think they must have taken into account the advantages or disadvantageous positions that were held and where we should be. So I do feel that we should not jump the gun, as it were, and see how things pan out, because if the army has stood firm for 9 months, they're not about to back off without ensuring their solid positions wherever they were. The third point I would like to make here quickly is, expanding a bit on what Manjeev said. Of course, like a good diplomat, he has welcomed the diffusion of tensions, which is a point I also made like a good Indian citizen. But here, let me just say that it is the fact that we stood firm without blinking that contributed in large measure to this disengagement coming about. And if I may just invite your attention to the 73 days face-off at Doklam, where again, we insisted on talking to them. They, of course, were pouring vitriol, but finally there was a disengagement. Here we have seen the same thing, but in 4 times fold the length of time. There is 9 months here. But still, the outcome is welcome if it holds and if it extends to the rest of the area. And the hint given in the defense minister's statement about dismantling of structures at North Pangong and South Pangong that were built after April 2020, to my mind, suggests that it is still in the Indian government's table of objectives that the Chinese will go back to April 2020 positions.
All right. So let me go back to a point that you made in your opening remark, Manji Puri, and the point that Jaidev Ranade made as well. Like a true diplomat, you welcomed this issue of disengagement. So how do we keep up the pressure on China and avoid any further misadventures?
Frank, this is a particularly relevant question. And of course, the longer answer within this particular framework lies in properly delineating the line of actual control, having all these agreements made legal. Now, that is a long-term step which must be taken. But, we are talking about things at the moment, and we look at General Sibat's areas of concern, which are real and very important. We look at the fact of a great degree of trust deficit, which means you must verify. In any case, trust you must, but verify at the same time you must. That's an international dictum. We all follow it, and there's no reason why we shouldn't follow it. What should be done now? Look, this is a limited, coordinated disengagement, both sides pulling back in a certain manner, as they said, synchronized. I'm using the Chinese expression, synchronized and organized. We also have used the same words, slightly different words. But what are we doing? In a limited area, in a limited manner. We both sides understand, they too do. Our Honorable Minister of Defense said it in the Parliament today, that there are other points. So this is not the entire set of issues which are germane only to the current set of issues and problems that are there. Now, the fact that we were resolute, the fact that we were strong, the fact that perhaps for the first time these discussions were what the Americans called Paul Mill discussion. So there was military commanders, but there was diplomatic heft provided to them also, with even the Joint Secretary participating on at least a few occasions. This has been a unique experience in terms of India and bringing together two sides of the heft. Of course, I'm sure higher level interactions between Beijing and New Delhi also simultaneously took place. The far better communications that we have in the world today would have contributed to things taking place perhaps literally in real time. But what do we have to do? A, without doubt, we have to be resolute. B, without doubt, we have to shore up the infrastructure on our side. We just must remember that infrastructure is more than half the job done. Courage, patriotism, all of that comes later, but you must have the capability of doing this. And thirdly, without any doubt at all, you must let the Chinese know that, look, we are not going to budge. It's not just being resolute. We are not the ones who are taking offensive action, who are showing expansionism. But please remember, we are a large country, a large economy, and we are resolute, and the question of your doing this does not arise. Somewhere Pakistan was mentioned. I fully understand when you look at the map, you see this particular thing happening, and the ideas of a kind of collusion, etc., are very simple, straightforward, and there is no way that we can rule them out from our thinking. But I must make a little point to you that the Chinese have done things for their own sake, their own interests, whether it is the so-called expansionist interests or their economic interests. On several occasions, when Pakistan has done things with India, the Chinese have actually stayed out, and we can go back all the way into time. So let us remember, the Chinese do recognize us for what we are. They know what Pakistan is for them, its utilities, etc. But it is not exactly the same game. So let's remember that infrastructure built up, in my opinion, is the most important thing. We should not think disengagement, now we can have a lull. That is not on. There is no time for complacency. You have to keep not only your ante up, but you need to keep building your capability, because nothing is understood better by people than your capacities and capabilities.
Absolutely. Very well put there by the ambassador. Let me bring in the general now. General, before I cut you short, you were talking about some of the other points of contention. We've spoken, of course, about Pangong Lake or Pangong So. You spoke about your particular apprehensions about Depsang. So what are the other points of contention, and what are some of the other outstanding issues that you wanted to flag?
See, Frank, no doubt about it that this move of disengagement, de-escalation and de-induction is a good move. Somewhere you have to give, somewhere you have to take. That is no doubt about it. My cause of concern was that I am sure the military commanders and diplomatic leaders would have gone into detail. But these are the, certain cause of concern. We must be very, very attentive because you are dealing with Chinese. Just about a year back or 2 years back, everyone thought that there won't be an all-out war with China and India because their economy is so much entrenched with each other. There is $85 billion is the trade between both of them. And second thing is India provide a huge market to China. And having said so, what did they done in Ladakh? They surprised by bringing 3 divisions. And they have now gone to a 1959 claim line. So they are changing goalposts time and again. So we should be very careful about Chinese. Chinese, what they say and what they do on ground are two different things. My only cause of concern is it's a good thing that we are now trying to do a disengagement and de-induction in north of Pangong Lake and south of Pangong Lake. Two things which I told earlier also, in south of Pangong Lake, details were not given. Does it mean that Kailash range will be vacated? Because, everything what Chinese are doing is doing after what we have done in Kailash range. That is a game changer. If we vacate Kailash range, what stopped them to occupy themselves? That whatever is the your protocol and agreements which are there starting from 1993 up till 2013, how do we make sure that the Chinese follow it? So this trust deficit is what is a cause of concern. So if you vacate Kailash range, the trump card which you had, you have already used it. So then the putting a pressure on Chinese to vacate Depsang is not there. How do we ensure that they vacate Depsang? That they will vacate Depsang in phase 2. But should they not do it, you have nothing left because you have already vacated Kailash range, which is the most dominating strategic height south of Pangong Lake. But if that remains with you, Chinese have no choice but to vacate Depsang. They give something, we give something. So my cause of concern is this. This is very important. I have served there as Chief of Staff. I understand the Chinese are very, very, dicey in this. The second thing which Ambassador was trying to convey, I fully agree. Unless you become as powerful as the Chinese, they are not going to respect you. Your infrastructure build-up and capacity build-up has to be there. Remember that the fourth level which we have inducted in Ladakh has surprised Chinese. But we cannot now de-induct that fourth level from that area of conflict because we cannot build up again the same fourth level in the same time period as much as Chinese can bring it in the Tibet plateau. So that is again a thing. But I certainly agree that it's a good move that you are doing a disengagement and de-escalation and de-induction, but be careful about Chinese. Chinese cannot be trusted. There is a trust deficit between India and China.
Okay, points taken. Time to get quick closing comments now from all my panelists with the best way forward and what needs to be done going forward. Starting first with you, Mr. Ranade.
Well, in addition to building up capabilities and infrastructure, the importance of which cannot be overemphasized, I would say that we must now drop our hesitance as far as China is concerned and figure out plans for imposing costs on them. In other words, we should not only react, we should make the Chinese react. In other words, they have to be aware that we can impose costs and we shall impose costs. I think that is the first thing that flows from our ability to withstand Chinese pressure on 2 major occasions so far. The second, we must not lose sight of the fact of what came out during this confrontation when the head of the South Asian affairs in the Chinese Institutes of Contemporary International Relations, a think tank of the Ministry of State Security of China, that is their foreign intelligence arm, made it very clear that India-China relations have a limit. They are not going to proceed beyond a point. And in any case, that a clash and a showdown was inevitable. So we are seeing that. We must keep it in mind that that is the Chinese makeup and there can be no question of trust, which leads me to the third point, that we have to be prepared for the Chinese to return either this summer or maybe later when they feel the time is right. We cannot afford to let our guard down.
All right, Ambassador.
Frank, I want to make just 1 or 2 simple points. on the ground, be resolute, build up your capabilities, and be willing to eyeball the other people, the Chinese, without at all taking on offensive things, etc. But let them know that we are not going to be not only no pushovers, but that they will get it as good as they give it. Second thing, we need to build international coalitions and continue to work on that. That is particularly important. I think what we are seeing in the world, no matter the change across the Atlantic, that continues to be the case, but we need to engage with major international partners so that the Chinese, who have global ambitions, realize that not working to a rules-based international order has a large price to pay. Of course, we need to also make them try and pay a price in terms of what we can do bilaterally. But therein, I personally believe you need to exercise all of this with what I call a degree of smartness because of the nature of their economy, the nature of our economy, and the nature of the global economy. So smart actions are certainly called for, but we need to keep exposing them on this. And lastly, I would say we should be prepared that not only on the ground militarily, etc., but they would make efforts in global forums, Security Council and elsewhere to put us on the mat. We need to be prepared for it. This is the nature of the ground realities as have unfolded, but it is also the nature of the emerging India and the country which is today the fifth largest economy on the way to becoming the third largest economy in the world. The Chinese were sanguine in becoming the second and the largest economy, forgetting that it's India which is coming up to the third largest place. Thank you.
All right. And General, very limited time. So quick closing comment from you with the best way forward.
Frank, 2-3 issues. One is that so far we were totally focusing more on the western sector toward the Pakistan. There is a time come now we have to focus more on the northern border, especially against China. Second thing is that we have to modernize our defense forces. You know, we have to spend some money if you have to build up infrastructure and improve our capacity on line of actual control, then possibly you have to spend more money on the defense. Third thing what is there is that, you know, so far we have been following this one China policy, and the China has been always trying to, go against India's interest in all international forums. We should not be very strict to that. We should also give our mind to Chinese that we mean business. We should also question Tibet. We should also question what's happening in Hong Kong and also try to maintain some relationship with Taiwan. I don't say that we should do immediately, but then we should be courageous enough to point out that to China, because China has been always going India's interest in all international forums, including United Nations Security Council. The next point, what I can only say is that requirement today is that if you have to stop the expansionism attitude of China, it is the collaboration and cooperation with other democracies of the world is the way forward.
Right.
Be with the US, be with Australia, be with Japan. The Quad is a step in the right direction. That's the way we have to go it. We will get respect from Chinese if we are equally strong, if not stronger than them.
Okay. All right. On that note, then I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this particular discussion is that, you know, we've been resolute and we have stood our ground and we've seen a positive outcome. This is an outcome which is, which is in the right direction, and it has been carried out, from one point of contention to the other, then it will ensure that it has reached its fruition. But we have to be careful really as far as the Chinese are concerned, because history has shown us that they do not go by what they say. So that's something that we need to be wary of. We need to be cautious and we need to be prepared as well going forward. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.